Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode. This is actually the 5th segment in a 10-part series that I am recording fresh for Simplicity TV on the Simplicity Couch. So last week I was talking all about cyclical awareness, tracking, how that can impact, and talked about things like the physical and physiological phases that are happening, the 4 phases, and then how that relates to the lunar. Today I'm going to go a little bit deeper in terms of each of those phases and how you can start to sync different parts of your lifestyle and your life into those. So let's start with phase 1, which is that follicular waxing moon energy. This is the spring in our body, okay? So when you're thinking about it from an exercise perspective, this is a great time to lift heavier. You have the benefit of additional estrogen and testosterone that is climbing in your body for tendon and ligament support when you are lifting heavier. When I'm talking heavy, I mean you're lifting somewhere between 5 and 8 repetitions. So this would be like your push week, not to the point where you don't have good form or you're going to injure yourself, but where you're like, all right, I'm going to challenge myself in this period of time. So exercise-wise, that would be great. Nutrition-wise, this is the period of time where you're actually more insulin sensitive. Your body does better with slightly more carbohydrates. So when we're looking at things like potatoes and rice and gluten-free grains, if you can manage them. I know a lot of you are leaning away from grains just on how it manages itself digestively, but rice tends to be a pretty neutral one for a lot of people, sometimes oats, sometimes not. Squash, pumpkin, all of your veggies, getting in organic berries and different fruits, beautiful ways to make sure that you're getting in an appropriate amount of carbohydrates, especially if you're going and you're wearing and tearing down the muscle tissue in those training sessions. You need the amino acids that your protein's going to provide. Specifically, leucine is going to be really important for us as women, humans overall, but definitely for us. And then you need the carbohydrates as well too, and some healthy fat. And your fiber is going to come from getting in the combination of those foods. So that's really, really important in that first half of the cycle. You're not going no carb, okay? You actually probably will get diminishing returns in the strength training sessions that you are doing. Now for your cardio, this is also a great time that you can go higher intensities. Maybe this is where you pull your HIIT, your high intensity interval training in, your power spin class, you go out for that jog, a hike, whatever that may be. Then as you come into ovulation, which is ovulation, full moon, and summer, this is typically when energy can be good. Now I say typically because some women, they actually really don't feel very good when they're ovulating. They can tend to feel worse at that time than they do at their period. And so if that's you, then what I'm talking about here, I would say to you, just kind of put a pin in that. And when I refer to some tips and steps about the new moon and the winter phase, that's what I would have you do here. But if ovulation feels pretty good in your body, this is a great time to go for the longer walk, to still be lifting to a certain intensity, but now maybe instead of doing splits, where you're doing like legs one day, shoulders and triceps another day, chest and back, maybe now you're doing full body workouts on these days. Maybe this is more circuit based. If you enjoy doing things like plyometrics or Metcon, AMRAPs, that type of stuff, this would be a great time to bring that in. Nutritionally, you're still going to want to make sure you're getting the protein, the carbohydrate, and the fat and the fiber at each of your meals. Hydration is certainly really important around this time as well too, because your training intensity and velocity might be a little bit higher. And then when we look at the luteal energy after ovulation, which is also coming into that waning moon and the fall energy, this is where now you're still going to lift your weights. You're still going to do your resistance training. Maybe your sleep will be good, like Charlie, who's literally snoring as we talk here. But at that time, you're probably going to decrease your load. So as estrogen is going into a dip at that point and progesterone is picking up, estrogen is really important for tensile integrity with tendons and ligaments. So you could be more prone to injury at that time between ovulation and your period. And if you are someone who has, a susceptible back, bad knees, a shoulder issue, those kind of things, and especially like when we talked about perimenopause, one of the things I didn't mention when we were talking about sarcopenic changes and losing muscle is also the increased risk of frozen shoulder on women as their estrogen is declining. So when you're in this period of time, this luteal energy, right, coming into your period, this is a great period of time to focus on lighter weights, slightly higher rep volume, like maybe 10 to 12, maybe up to like 14 to 16. but your range of motion, your mobility, full range, like really owning the movement pattern that you are doing. And I also at this time love to bring in barre. I love to bring in Pilates. I like to have a really structured yet fluid yoga practice that comes in. And this is where I'll bring in spin. And I won't do crazy spin, but something where like I can dig and pull and press. I tend to gravitate to spin classes that are like pure ride, where there's some hills and there's some mixes. So I'm getting in the strength as I'm getting in the cardio. Now, as you come into the final phase, which is the new moon, your period, and winter, I will take my first 48 hours, sometimes even 72 hours. I find the first day of my period isn't actually all that bad. It's my day 2 is the one that for me, my body is just like, don't even think about it. Just don't even think about it. And so I listen to that. So when I'm on my period, I will actually get a little bit more sleep. I will move slower in the morning. I will have hopefully less on my calendar if my period came at a time where I scheduled that. And I'll do more things like the Coregeous ball and massage the uterus. I'll stretch, I'll foam roll, I'll be in front of my red light, and I'll go for a walk. But that's it. And then even as I'm starting to move back into workouts, you know, maybe day 3, but for sure by day 4 or day 5, I'm moving back in a way where if I'm doing weights, it's much lighter volume. I'll probably break my kind of training fast with Pilates or with barre. That's what I tend to move towards, and then start that cycle again. So here's what I love about cycle syncing your movement. And in these last phases, like in that luteal phase, nutritionally, this is where the body becomes a little bit more insulin resistant. So some of the higher amount of carbohydrates we were maybe doing in the first half, this is maybe now where you want to really make sure you're hitting those protein targets for yourself. Carbohydrates might lower slightly. So let's say you were consuming, 175 grams of carbohydrates per day in your first half. Maybe now you're taking in 125 grams or 100 grams of carbohydrates. But now you're maybe getting in a little bit more fat. So maybe the first half you were consuming 55 grams of fat a day. Now you're getting in 65 grams of fat a day. So you're just kind of doing this trade up, but your protein's going to stay consistent. Also at this time is when electrolytes are really important. So sodium, potassium, magnesium. I love the packets from Element. We actually have a referral code where when you go and buy a box, you get an additional 12 sent to you for free. So you can check that out. But then as you come into your period nutritionally, if you were going to do a longer fast, like a 16-hour, this is a time when the body may feel better with it. And doing teas and soups and broths or smoothies, but you don't have to. So I always just, want to preface that by saying, just because I said you could, doesn't mean that you need to. Just really listen to your body and know that if you are a woman who suffers from cramps and heavier bleeding and painful clots and breast tenderness and really bad headaches and emotional mood swings, you need to really be careful those, 4 or 5 days leading into your period. How much sugar are you taking in? How much processed food? Make sure you're treating your body really well, because you can really turn the tides and not feel so good if you're not getting in the proper nutrition that you need. Now, when we look at cycle syncing from an energy perspective, this is where, like for me running my business, I'm very aware of where my body is going to be at as I'm plugging things into my calendar. I don't do it where it's like, okay, I am in my follicular phase for 7 to 10 days, so I only have 7 to 10 days a month where I can show up, right? Or have that energy. That's not how it works. But it's like some of the bigger things that are going to happen if we're hosting an event, if I'm doing filming or that, I try and position it when I know I'm going to have the energetic capacity to be able to do that. And then if something happens where my cycle's earlier or later and that didn't quite work out, well, now I at least know that I need to double down on my sleep to prepare or recover from that. I need to eat more or shift what I'm eating to prepare for that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's when you understand it, how you sync your life up is that you have the knowledge and now you can shift things on the go as need be. So I think if you are a woman who is really desiring to have better energetic time management, better understanding connection of how to support your body with all the things you're doing in your life, to improve your training performance and results in accordance with your hormones and your body's energy, that cycle syncing can be an absolute game changer. And that's the birthplace of synced. I recognized it for myself when I had, so in 2017, I started to really do more of the syncing. 2018, I leaned into it deeper. 2019, I trained for my last fitness competition, and I completely did it based on my cycle, and that sealed the deal for me, because I had never felt better before turning 40, doing that show. And so that really has become the basis of how I do a lot in my life. And so if you're interested in that, we'll add a little code in here for you so you can get a discount to join the Synced community. So one-time fee, lifetime access. We have well over 400 classes now, ranging in everything from dumbbell strength training, body weight, barbell, bands, Tabatas, HIIT training, dance classes, bar Pilates, yoga. We have spin classes that are starting in the fall. So it's really diversified, and classes range as short as 10 minutes all the way up to an hour. So yeah, and we do seasonal meal plans and so much education in there. So if you're interested, you can click on the link below. If you're listening on the podcast, we'll make sure that it is in the show notes. And as always, have a fantastic rest of your day, and wishing you more simplicity and more ease in all that you do.